I want to start our time today by offering a sincere divine blessing over you.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, may God grant you a really beautiful, peaceful day, and may his divine blessing rest upon your entire week ahead.
Absolutely.
It's just so good to have you here with us because today, well, we're looking at something wild.
We really are. It's a massive story.
Right, because 2,000 years ago, a single lynch date, just a lynch date in the city of Antioch, nearly destroyed the entire Christian faith before it even started.
Which is just crazy to think about.
It really is. So we are diving into this narrative today that is intensely human, incredibly dramatic, and honestly surprisingly relevant to the modern world.
Definitely.
We're doing a deep dive into the extensive notes and commentary from the Holman and NAA study Bibles, specifically focusing on chapter 2 of the Apostle Paul's letter to the Galatians.
And the details in these study notes are just fascinating.
They really are. Our mission for this deep dive is to explore how one man's incredibly bold stance against, well, public hypocrisy completely redefined the concepts of freedom and grace.
Yeah, he really put it all on the line.
He did. And to you listening, I know the geography of Jerusalem and Antioch might feel, really distant, but the underlying mechanisms of this story deal directly with things you face every single day.
Oh, 100%.
We are unpacking how we navigate intense peer pressure, why we cling to toxic perfectionism, and what it actually takes to find true acceptance.
Because the cultural flashpoint documented here is, well, it's staggering.
Okay.
What we have in these source notes isn't just like abstract theology.
Right.
It's the documentation of a massive cultural and religious collision. I mean, if this conflict had gone the other way, the trajectory of Western civilization, the fundamental structure of this faith, it would look entirely different.
Wow, so the stakes are that high.
Exactly. And the internal psychological struggles of these historical figures are identical to ours.
Okay, so let's get into it. The scene opens with Paul recounting a journey he took to Jerusalem. And the timeline immediately stands out in the notes.
Yeah, the 14 years.
Right. We are 14 years past his initial conversion and his previous visit. He's been out in the uncharted territories, building this movement, and he brings along his trusted partner, Barnabas, and this guy named Titus.
And that journey wasn't just a casual visit to the holy city or like a routine check-in.
Right. It was highly intentional.
Very. Paul went up to Jerusalem because of a direct divine revelation. He was acting on a prompt to arrange a private, highly strategic summit.
Like a closed-door meeting.
Exactly. With the absolute pillars of the early church, James, Peter, and John. He went to them behind closed doors to present the exact, unvarnished message he'd been preaching to the non-Jewish world.
Okay. And the notes say he did this specifically to ensure that he wouldn't be running in vain.
Yes, that's the phrase he uses.
But wait, I have a question about that.
Go for it.
If Paul is operating on a direct divine revelation, why is he holding secret closed-door meetings with the founders to ensure he isn't, running in vain?
It's a fair question.
Like, if he has ultimate confidence that his message is from God, is he actually seeking their permission? Is there an underlying insecurity here, or is this just, like, pure political maneuvering to prevent a schism?
The commentary actually addresses this directly. It suggests this is a masterclass in diplomacy and long-term strategy rather than insecurity.
Oh, interesting. So he wasn't doubting himself.
Not at all. Paul didn't doubt his own message. He didn't need James or Peter's validation to soothe his own conscience, but he recognized a terrifying practical reality.
Which was what?
Well, if the leadership in Jerusalem publicly rejected his converts, the entire community would fracture irreparably. You'd immediately have a Jewish church and a Gentile church completely severed from one another.
Oh, wow. So a total civil war?
Exactly. His work would have been in vain, not because his theology was wrong, but because the unified body he was trying to build would have shattered into competing factions.
That makes the inclusion of Titus so much more intense then. Because he doesn't just bring theological arguments to this summit, right?
No, he brings a person.
Right. He brings a living, breathing test case.
Yeah.
Titus is an uncircumcised Greek. And in the ancient Jewish context, the ultimate covenant marker of belonging to God's people was I think the Greek word in the notes is peritomy.
Yes, peritomy, circumcision.
Right. So by bringing Titus directly into the headquarters of the Jewish Christian world, Paul is deliberately forcing the issue.
He's making them look the issue right in the face.
Yeah. He's demanding an answer to whether someone must become culturally and legally bound to the ancient rules to be a true follower.
It's a brilliant high-stakes provocation. And the pressure in that room was immensely compounded by the presence of what the text calls false brothers.
Oh, yeah, the spies.
Right. These were individuals who had secretly infiltrated the group specifically to spy on the freedom Paul's converts were experiencing.
That is so wild.
Their goal was straight-up espionage and subversion. They actively wanted to strip away the grace Paul was preaching and drag everyone back into the enslavement of a rigid, checklist-based legalism.
So they wanted to force Titus to be circumcised.
Right then and there, they were demanding it.
Looking at this dynamic, it feels a lot like a high-stakes corporate boardroom showdown, where the future identity of the entire company is on the line.
Oh, that's a great way to look at it.
Like, imagine a maverick regional director, Paul, returning to headquarters after proving this radical, inclusive, new business model out in the field.
Right, he's got the results.
Yeah, but lurking in the boardroom are these old guard traditionalists trying to leverage corporate bylaws to shut the whole thing down. They just want to enforce the old dress code and the old operating procedures.
The tension would be palpable. Because the false brothers aren't just arguing for a different preference, they are arguing for a completely different mechanism of salvation.
But Paul doesn't cave.
No, he refuses to yield an inch. And the result of that closed-door summit is a profound victory for Paul's vision.
They actually agree with him.
They do. James, Peter, and John look at Titus and agree that he does not need to adopt the law. They formally acknowledge Paul's specific calling to the Gentiles.
And they seal it by extending the right hand of fellowship to Paul and Barnabas, which, the notes emphasize, wasn't just a polite handshake.
Right. In the ancient Near East, that gesture was a binding, formal symbol.
It was absolute agreement, partnership, and unified mission. They were locked in together.
Completely locked in. The only stipulation they added was that Paul continue to remember the poor, which he was already passionate about doing anyway.
So the boardroom applauds, the new model is approved, and absolute unity is achieved.
Which is exactly what makes this subsequent narrative pivot so devastating.
Right. It all falls apart.
It does. The geographical shift from Jerusalem down to the cosmopolitan melting pot of Antioch, it sets the stage for a total collapse of that hard-won unity.
Because what was agreed upon in the safety of a private boardroom completely unravels when it's tested in the public square.
Exactly.
So Antioch is diverse, it's vibrant, and initially things are going flawlessly, right?
Yeah. Peter arrives in Antioch and begins freely eating and associating with the Gentile believers.
He's just hanging out with them.
Completely bypassing the strict dietary separation laws he was raised with. By sharing a table, he is publicly validating them as full, equal members of the family. He is entirely living out the freedom they just ratified in Jerusalem.
Because table fellowship in that era carried profound sociological weight.
Oh, massive weight. Sharing a meal meant shared identity.
But then the atmosphere violently shifts. The notes say it happens the moment certain men came from James in Jerusalem.
Right. The arrival of these influential, strictly traditional men triggers something deep within Peter.
He gets scared.
He becomes terrified of the circumcision party, and he abruptly withdraws. He physically separates himself, completely refusing to eat with the very people he had just embraced.
See, this is what I don't get. How does the rock of the early church cave so quickly?
It's hard to read, honestly.
I mean, this is Peter. He knows the theology. He was in the room when they shook hands on it. Yet the moment a few traditionalists from the Home Office walk through the door, he panics.
Yeah.
It's exactly like sitting in a high school cafeteria. You're happily sitting with the new, marginalized kids having a great time. But the moment the strict, influential, cool kids walk in, you panic and pretend you don't know your new friends.
That is exactly what it is.
It exposes just how deeply ingrained our fear of human opinion truly is, doesn't it? It's not just a casual change of mind. It's the sheer terror of losing status and being ostracized by the people you consider your core community.
That's spot on. The psychological weight of a lifetime of cultural conditioning simply overpowered his theological convictions in that moment.
Wow.
Think about it. For centuries, associating with outsiders rendered a Jewish person ritually impure. Overcoming that millennia-old barrier required immense courage.
And he just lost it.
When the men from James arrived, Peter didn't just fear losing a few friends. He faced the terrifying prospect of being socially and religiously excommunicated by his own people.
So his desire for safety and belonging within that inner circle caused him to completely abandon the truth.
Yes. And the collateral damage is catastrophic. The commentary highlights that Peter's hypocrisy acted like a highly contagious virus.
It spread to everyone.
It wasn't contained to just him. Every other Jewish believer in Antioch saw what Peter did and immediately followed suit.
Even Barnabas. That blew my mind. The man who stood shoulder to shoulder with Paul in Jerusalem to defend Titus. Even he was swept away by this wave of hypocrisy.
It shows how powerful peer pressure is, but the theological implications of that moment threaten the core of the entire movement. By withdrawing, Peter is implicitly broadcasting a horrific message. He's saying, if you want to sit at the main table, if you want true acceptance, Christ isn't enough.
Ah, I see.
You have to adopt our customs, our laws, and our cultural checklists. He is rebuilding the very barrier that the gospel was meant to demolish.
And Paul recognizes that if this goes unchecked, the faith is ruined. So he confronts Peter publicly, right to his face.
Which must have been incredibly tense.
Oh, I can't even imagine. He calls the behavior out as completely out of step with the truth of the gospel. He essentially corners Peter and says, if you, born into the law, have been living in freedom, how dare you now use your influence to force others back into bondage?
It's a brilliant exposure of the contradiction.
It really is.
Yeah.
But this public rebuke isn't just about bad table manners, right? It's simply the launch pad for Paul to explain the actual mechanics of faith.
Exactly. The confrontation forces Paul to articulate the heavy, profound theology that underpins everything.
So let's get into that theology.
Okay, so Paul anchors his entire argument in Galatians 2, verses 15 through 18, and he does this by introducing the defining concept of the faith justification.
Justification?
Yes. He declares that no one is justified by the works of the law, but solely by faith in Jesus Christ. And the study notes spend considerable time dissecting this term, emphasizing that justification is fundamentally a forensic legal concept.
Okay, so we are essentially standing in a heavenly courtroom.
Exactly that. Justification does not mean the defendant is suddenly made functionally flawless in their daily behavior.
Right.
It means that God, as the righteous judge, officially declares the person not guilty and fully righteous in his sight.
And the critical mechanism here is the basis of that declaration.
Yes. The sources emphasize that this verdict relies entirely on Christ's redemptive work. It is absolutely decoupled from human effort, moral striving, or adherence to ancient rules like the paratomy.
Paul even points out that both he and Peter, who possessed the law their entire lives, realized that checking those religious boxes could never justify them.
They had to abandon their own resumes and rely entirely on faith.
But let's follow the logic of this courtroom analogy for a second, because it raises a massive ethical red flag for a lot of people.
Oh, definitely.
If a judge bangs the gavel, declares me totally not guilty, and clears my record entirely based on someone else's merit, what is stopping me from walking out of that courtroom and living terribly?
The old free pass argument.
Right. If my moral performance doesn't secure my justification, isn't Paul just handing out a blank check for lawlessness? Why should I bother having any moral compass at all?
That is the most common critique of grace, and Paul anticipates it instantly. The commentary breaks down his rhetorical question in the text. If we seek to be justified in Christ and are found to be sinners, is Christ a minister of sin?
And his answer.
Paul answers this with the strongest possible negative in the Greek language. Absolutely not.
So why doesn't it lead to lawlessness?
The reason lies in the actual mechanism of true faith. Justification isn't a cold, detached legal fiction where a piece of paper is signed but the person remains unchanged.
Okay, so how does that mechanism work in practice?
The faith that justifies also unites the person to Christ so intimately that their fundamental internal nature is altered.
Oh, I see. It's an inside-out transformation.
Think of a governor granting a full, unconditional pardon to a prisoner on death row. The prisoner doesn't receive that pardon and immediately seek to assault the governor.
They'd be incredibly grateful.
Exactly. The overwhelming, crushing weight of that grace fundamentally alters their relationship to the law. They no longer obey out of a terrifying fear of the executioner. Their obedience is now an organic byproduct of profound gratitude and a transformed identity.
That structural shift in identity perfectly sets up the absolute crescendo of this chapter, verses 19 through 21.
It really does.
Paul makes this staggering, deeply personal declaration. He says, I've been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me.
The notes unpack the profound spiritual reality behind that statement. Paul explains that he died to the law so that he could live to God.
And this isn't physical death, obviously.
No, it introduces the mechanism of substitutionary atonement.
The idea that Christ acts as a complete substitute.
Precisely. When Paul says he was crucified with Christ, he means that Christ absorbed the full penalty of the broken law on Paul's behalf.
Wow.
Because the penalty was paid in full through that execution, Paul's relationship to the law as a system of earning salvation is completely severed.
So the old version of Paul, the Pharisee driven by ego, fueled by self-righteousness, and obsessed with maintaining this pristine moral checklist just to manipulate God into loving him, that man is dead.
He's gone. His new existence is entirely animated by faith in the Son of God, who loved him and gave himself up for him.
Let's contextualize what it means to actually live out that substitutionary atonement today, because trying to earn this justification through human effort, whether it's ancient dietary laws, modern religious checklists, or just exhausting yourself trying to be a good enough person, it's like a financial transaction, right? Well, it's like discovering someone has paid off your billion-dollar mountain of debt, and your response is to dig through your couch cushions and offer them a handful of pocket change.
Oh, that is a great analogy. The disparity in scale highlights the futility of human effort perfectly.
But it goes so much deeper than just the futility of the effort, right? It's about the fundamental insult to the giver.
Yes.
If a benefactor steps in, clears a catastrophic debt, and hands you the deed to your life completely free and clear, walking up to them every single month with a $5 bill to pay your fair share, fundamentally corrupts the relationship.
It really does. You are rejecting their grace.
Exactly. You are insisting on turning a relationship of pure, unconditional love into a transactional landlord-tenant dynamic. You are demanding to remain an employee when you have been adopted as an heir.
That framing perfectly captures the absolute conclusion of Paul's argument in verse 21. He states, "I do not nullify the grace of God, for if righteousness were through the law, then Christ died for no purpose."
Christ died for no purpose. That's a heavy statement.
The commentary is emphatic here. The human condition is so deeply broken that no amount of better behavior, stricter rules, or refined checklists can remedy it.
We just can't fix ourselves.
No. If human effort could bridge the gap, the crucifixion was a tragic, unnecessary waste. Salvation requires the pure, unadulterated grace of God, which actually demands the utter humiliation of our own self-reliance to accept.
Wow. This journey through the text today has been profound.
It's a lot to process.
It is. We started an intense, highly strategic, closed-door summit in Jerusalem, analyzing the cultural weapon of circumcision and the fight for Titus's freedom.
Right, and then we moved to Antioch, watching the terrifying sociology of peer pressure cause the rock of the church to rebuild the very walls he helped tear down.
And we finally landed on the mechanistic reality of justification, that forensic courtroom declaration that completely replaces the exhausting treadmill of the law, permanently shifting our identity from fearful rule keepers to grateful recipients of grace.
Which is just a beautiful reality to land on.
It is. And it pulls this ancient conflict right out of the first century and drops it straight into your lap today.
It really does.
It leaves you with a deeply personal question to mull over as you navigate your week. Based on the stark reality that human effort cannot purchase worth, ask yourself, in your own life right now, where are you still stubbornly holding out handfuls of pocket change?
That's a tough question to ask.
It is. Are you exhausting yourself trying to perfectly execute a daily checklist, whether it is at your job, in your personal relationships, or in your religious life, just to feel acceptable to the people around you, or to feel acceptable to God? Or are you willing to finally put the pennies away, abandon the arrogance of trying to earn it, and rest entirely in the profound, transformative freedom of true grace?
Because the entire trajectory of your life changes the moment you accept that the account is already cleared.
It truly does. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today.
It's been great.
God blesses all the listeners.
Yeah.
Until next time.